Welcome. Episode 6, Season 4. How the time flies, Jim.
Oh, the people have spoken and we have listened. Another Jerry and Ryan podcast free zone. You know, those cards and letters keep coming in. This could be the A team forever. I'm just saying.
It could be.
You got to give the people what they want.
This could be our most popular podcast in all of 4 seasons.
No, it always is.
No Ryan.
Anytime Jerry and Ryan aren't on,
their schedules are just so busy.
There goes the ratings through the roof.
So busy. I wish I was in demand that much.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
If only I could be as popular as those two.
Exactly what I was thinking. Last episode was what, a couple weeks ago, roughly?
I think Doug Botts.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on that just a little bit. I thought that having Doug on the show was fantastic. I thought that worked great for us because I just think it's good for the racers to hear the perspective that a promoter has. And Doug has got, I think, a pretty balanced perspective on how he views what he does at his racetrack, how he handles his racing events, his perspective on divisions, and I think also on the issue of shortening the racetrack. I think that's a really, really interesting subject that Shelby County Speedway and Doug and the entire team over there have pulled off. So I thought it was very cool listening, and I had a couple racers come up to me over the weekend.
With success. I mean, the numbers back up what Doug has done and what Doug is saying up there.
Exactly. Yeah. I think people appreciated that podcast. I sure did. It was nice of him to take the time because he was literally, I think we called him, he was in the parking lot and said, "Hey, we want to be on our podcast." That's about how much advance notice we gave him. So,
well, we don't like to share that with everybody. You know, we made arrangements, sent the plane over, picked Doug up, brought him in, put him up in the best hotel in Vinton, a 5-star resort.
All the intense planning that goes into
oh my God. If
all of
people
this
only
stuff
knew
at IMCA.
what it took to put this podcast together. You guys, I think people think we just sit down right before it and go.
Pull. Got it.
You know, there's the rehearsals, you know, 2-3 rehearsals a day. You know, we have staff writers that, you know, provide us with the jokes. We don't come up with this shit on our own. It's a process. I mean, there's a lot of people behind making this work.
A team of people behind the scenes.
Yeah, catering.
Yeah, the catering, the limo rides from 2 blocks down.
The writers and stuff that we have to provide our talent and all that kind of stuff. It takes a lot to get all of this stuff put together.
Doug Botts, for example, wanted only green M&Ms and raspberry slushies in the green room before he came on.
Or he was walking out.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do it.
Yep.
Right. Now we'll try to move a lot quicker without Jerry and Ryan.
How
here.
can we not?
I mean, Ryan isn't quite as distracting as Jerry is, obviously. But we've had a lot of racing since our last podcast.
Oh
we got
God.
through the Memorial Day holiday weekend, so yeah, I mean it's nuts. We were all out on the road. I wasn't as far from home as you guys were, but we were all. Ben was hitting the West Coast happenings, and you were down at the All-Star Tour down in Texas and Oklahoma. And I hit the anniversary races, which were about, one of them was about 3 minutes from my house, and the other one was an hour and a half over at Boone. So I did not go to Marshalltown for his anniversary race. I think I've been to Marshalltown enough this year. It's kind of how I looked at it. No offense to any of the racers, but I'd already been there like 2 or 3 times. Almost every race that they'd had over there, so.
Well, sometimes we can wear our welcomes out. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, we could start out down there with the All-Star Shootout, and, you know, once again, it got kicked off at Southern Oklahoma Speedway. And, you know, we can't say enough about the job John and Nikki does down there. I mean, it's just incredible. And, you know, yet we're talking a Wednesday night in Ardmore, Oklahoma, where we have, if I'm not mistaken, 1 sanctioned track in the state of Oklahoma. 1,200 to win for the modifieds. 55 of them show up. What's that tell you right there about the job they're doing there? You know, 30 sport mods, 35 stock cars. I mean, a great field for a midweek race in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
I think the last time we talked about Ardmore, or every time we talk about Ardmore, I've been going there for a long time, way back in the Virgil Page days, which was, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe. And the job that John and Nikki have done at that facility are just, it's crazy. It's such a cool place, and it puts on really, really good races. And at the end of the day, the car counts usually are reflective of that. And I think that's, the effort that they put in, and then obviously the surface. At the end of the day, the racers want to go where they can race. We see this all the time, and Southern Oklahoma just nails it when it comes to hitting those marks. They just do a great job.
John took a little bit of time, farmed the track before the features, and we had one caution in 3 features. I think 25-lap modified feature and 20-lap Southern Sport Mod and stock car feature. One yellow the whole time.
You know what John
and
should
a lot
do?
of
You know what Nikki should do?
go on a cruise.
No, they should do that same thing that Roger does at Eagle, where they give like free pit passes to everybody in the feature if they don't have a caution.
Yeah, they'd come out okay on that deal.
Right, everybody get in free next week. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But no, great racing. Tanner Black, won the modifieds. But once again, it was green, white, checkered in all the divisions except for the one caution in the stock cars. You had the Southern Sport Mods. Josh Landers won the A there that night, and he kind of made it look a little bit easy. But once again, the track was so racy, and in the stock cars, Brett Berry came out of Kansas. So we had 2 Kansas drivers win features in Ardmore, Oklahoma. To kick off the tour. Following that, we ended up going to Grayson County, which if you haven't been to Grayson County in a while, you're not going to recognize it.
It's kind of the same thing. Same thing. I mean, Benny Busby was the very first IMCA sanctioned racetrack
in Texas
and promoter in the state of Texas, Grayson County. And that, again, I remember the days where I sat I'd sit in the infield with Benny, and he's cutting watermelon with a pocket knife and handing it out to people. And I mean, he lived like literally you had to drive through past his house to get to his backyard where the racetrack is at. There's just so much history at Grayson County for us, and to see that place and what Mark has done with it, it's,
oh my gosh,
it's crazy.
It's a crazy, nice little place. A tougher track to get into than Grayson County. I mean, you're driving through the trees on barely a one lane road, but you know what? It's one of those tracks that the fans just come out week in and week out. And on a Thursday night, they had a hell of a grandstand there that night. Once again, the track had a little bit of character, but that made for some great racing. We talked about the great job that John Webb does at Ardmore, but he took that promoter's hat off, put his driver's hat on, and won the A feature the next night at Grayson. So, let me see Jerry Van Sickle do that.
Right.
But
it's interesting because we get this a lot behind the scenes where people are like, oh, this promoter did this and this promoter did that, and you should make the promoters do this and you should make the promoters do that. And at the end of the day, we've said this before, many of our promoters are former racers. Almost, I would say, if there was a percentage, I'd say high. It's a high percentage. More promoters are attached to race cars or were attached to racing than those that aren't. It's very common. So they have a passion for the sport, and you got a guy like John that he's still racing, and runs races the night before and then wins a feature at another track the next night. I think it's one of the reasons why John, in I think anybody who meets him, he's a pretty cool guy, But it's also one of the reasons why I think John is so respected down there. Is he's a racer's racer, you know what I mean? A racer's promoter.
Yeah, absolutely.
He just everybody likes him. He's a hard guy not to like.
Best part is he pulled in with an open trailer. When was the last time we've seen a modified race with 37 modifieds in the field get won by an open trailer?
Well, I think his last toter home got stolen, didn't it? Then some guy hauled it down the highway with a pickup truck or something through a field and ripped it all to hell.
I think they got it. They got it back, but it was all torn to shit.
Some guy on meth.
Yeah, they were cooking meth as they were driving. But we talk about what you were just saying about the connections, promoters and track owners, have with racing and the track. And we go to our Southern Sport Mods. The feature winner was Jared Bransom, and I'm sure everybody down that way knows the Bransom family is the owners of KSP, and they have their dad Jay, who's raced forever, won IMCA national championships.
Yep.
But I think I saw somebody write today that Jared's a better driver than Jay, and I'm gonna stand behind that, Brett.
Yeah. It's a fact. I've watched Jay race.
Yeah.
Jay's a good racer, but I think both his kids are pretty talented racers.
He's no Jared or Jack.
Pardon me?
And
yeah, right.
He's no Jared or Jack.
Exactly.
Jay isn't.
Yeah, he's got two kids that race. So again, there's another example. You've got John and his situation. You've got the Branson family, their attachment to KSP. They've owned it for many, many, many years. Their kids are both active IMCA racers, and their parents own a racetrack. So it happens. I think it happens more often than people realize. Because you have people in certain areas that they think that that's a conflict of interest, and we can understand that. Obviously, when I raced, I had problems maintaining my ability to separate my emotion on the racetrack from common sense and my attachment to IMCA, and that's why I quit racing. And people ask me all the time, "Have you ever raced before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have." "Do you race now?" And I'm like, "No." And I've learned that lesson. It's hard. It's hard to separate it, but people do. And I also think that at times that when people choose to sanction with us and they own racetracks and they race, the sanction in many aspects is the promoter endorsing turning over some of the responsibilities of the decision making when it comes to rules and points and procedures, turning it over to the sanction. And so when you have parents or racers who have kids that race that also promote and they sanction, I think it shows a little bit their attempt to somewhat separate themselves from it as much as they possibly can. And I don't ever think that's a bad thing.
No.
But no matter how you try to separate it, they always get attached back to it. Favoritism on calls being made and some of the other things. And the fact that we as a sanction, we try to be as transparent as we possibly can when it comes to decision making and how we decide on penalties, how we decide on issuing penalties, just all kinds of different things. I think that the sanctions involvement assists the situations that we see quite often where people are attached to race cars. Because we get people mad at us all the time too, as well, that we make decisions that they don't necessarily think we should make because of the fact that they promote a racetrack. We file relationships on some of the decisions that we make, but at the end of the day, I think all the promoters and all the racers and stuff understand how, or at least we try to demonstrate how. We try to just take the names out of it and just go by, okay, what happened, who did it, didn't really matter, but what they did, and you get into that a little bit with calls and penalties and people saying, "Oh, you guys should do this," and we had a situation like that, for example. Not attached necessarily to somebody at the track, but a penalty we issued down there. We talked a little bit about it on, was it Tuesday when we came back to work? On a rev limiter situation down there.
Yeah. That was at Heart of Texas on Friday with Corey Bransom. I mean, his rev limiter
what was
did
his
not
last
work.
name?
Bransom, not Branson. What is it? Bronson.
Yeah.
Bronson. Yeah, Casey
Yeah,
Bronson.
Bronson.
It was a different.
Yeah.
We had a situation where a rev limiter that was either not hooked up or not properly grounded. There's situations that pop up where the rev limiters don't work. And so we try to make like common sense decisions on how that penalty is applied. What is the penalty? And if you read in our book, it says in there, if you get caught with like an altered rev limiter, we consider that to be one that we've seen in the past where guys go internally into the boxes. They'll put a resistor into the rev limiter wire, and it changes the actual rev limiter. It changes it internally. So they alter the product. We view that penalty as much more severe, more intentional than a guy who maybe doesn't get the thing grounded right, or a chip that falls out of it. In the old boxes, we used to have guys that put the box up in there so they could get the chip, and the chip the connectors would loosen up, and the chip would fall out. And we'd find chips in the floorboard in the cockpit of a race car. So those situations are two different things, and they deserve different penalties. But at times people don't understand that, or they do, but they still think we should apply a really severe penalty for what we feel is an infraction that doesn't warrant it. But anyhow.
And once again, he showed up in tech the next night down at KSP, and everything worked.
So it wasn't the cheating that got him
Correct.
into tech in Waco.
Correct.
Right.
Get back to Grayson County, and I think leading right into what we're saying is Jack Bransom finished third in the stock cars that night. And Shelby William Gould ran 1-2. I mean, that was probably one of the top 5 races I've seen this year in all my visits and stuff. I mean, a fantastic race. Anytime you have Shelby Williams, William Gould, Jack Bransom, and PJ Egbert running in the top 4, I mean, it was great. And Jack Bransom got PJ coming to the checkered, coming out of 4. So, I mean, once again, a fantastic feature for the stock cars.
Yeah,
but I mean,
go ahead.
It's tough. We talk about, like you were saying, the transparency we try to do. And one of the things is, with our lineup procedure, the way it's supposed to be run, you pretty much know who's going to be starting where before the night for the most part. The point leader more than likely is going to be starting 12th. Second place is going to be starting 11th. So there is no, fudging with the draws and the redraws and all that. It's pretty simple to track and to keep up on and to check on.
Yeah, it's interesting reading Ben's stories, and Ben writes so many of them. It's interesting reading the stories, especially the ones where you see a lot of them where you see guys that are coming from 10th place, guys that are coming from 12th place. So as we get into this time of the year now, most of the racetracks are open. They've got through their first couple of shows on the draw-redraw format to get the point average established. And then you start seeing point leaders that are, forced to come from 12th, 10th, depending obviously on how many cars are there on that format. But you've got a lot of specials. Memorial Day's just filled full of specials. So there's a lot of draw-redraw stuff that we do see. And people ask this stuff all the time. Why don't you change this? Why don't you change that? We continue to feel like, and a good percentage of our promoters and even the racers, the invert still at the end of the day makes for some of the best racing that you can see.
Absolutely.
And it is consistent and it is fair. It's something that racers can keep up with, and somewhat even forecast where they're going to start if they get into a transfer spot. You're racing your heats for transfer positions to get into the you're essentially trying to qualify. But we do have people say, "Oh, why don't you guys do the draw-redraw every week?" Why don't the consistencies of that are very inconsistent at times, and we think that the point invert is still a better system.
Sure, I mean,
it's debatable. Yeah. People want to argue this every single year, but
every single day. I mean, a track championship, you got, two guys racing each other. Why not make them race each other all year together? Why should one guy start first, the other guy start 12th? And once again, at the end of the day, we're in the entertainment business, and part of our job is to put on the best show possible for the fans. And, we, along with many of our other promoters, believe putting on a good race that's exciting to watch is the way to do that.
Yeah, and I still, at the end of the day, too, think this plays into a little bit of the conversation of the anniversary race, and for us to talk a little bit about that in Vinton. But yeah, I still think that point racing is where the vast majority of racers are still landing these days. We can say specials and guys that are racing
money, they race for money,
racing for a living, or purses, and some of the things that come up. And at the end of the day, there's been some pretty famous quotes from guys like Lottie that stick and at times piss people off. Like, they'll race, you put a watermelon out in the infield, they'll race for that. I mean, that is a fairly accurate quote of what was said, but it wasn't said in a way that was meant to demean the racers that raced at Boone Speedway. It was said in the way that basically what he was saying is that the racers don't race for money at the end of the day. They really don't. And the reality when it comes to purses, the general rule of thumb is $4 to $6 is what a racer will spend for every dollar that they're racing for. So you're never going to close the gap. It's never been closed, and it's never going to get closed. People talk about 100,000 to win modified shows. People talk about 50,000 to win, 20,000 to win, all this super late model racing and stuff that we're seeing. At the end of the day, all that is doing is raising the bar for what the teams are having to spend. It is just simply a fact. Unfortunately, the sport, that's how the sport is. And I don't think that's ever going to change. So when you get back to our level of racing, hobby racers, local racers, what we have built this association around and why it is so popular, when you get back to that subject, we're going to continue to defend it because we think the results prove our positions, and that is most racers don't travel more than 40 miles a week to race. They just don't.
One time a week.
They just don't. It's why people say, well, oh, geez, why don't you have a hobby stock tour? Or why don't you have a sport compact tour? And one of the reasons why we don't is because those particular racers, we see more than anything where they land, and that is their local racers. They don't go very far. So if you want to know why we don't have a sport compact tour travel in the upper Midwest, that's why. And same with hobby stocks. It's why. The racers in those divisions just aren't those types of racers. But back to the anniversary race anyhow, and purses, and one more point on this. $4,600 to win the modified anniversary race here in Vinton, $2,000 to win the sport mods, and the car counts were respectable, but I would have expected more, and I did. But it to me it plays back into where racers go and why they go there. Look at Sunday night, Memorial, the eve of Memorial Day. We had the anniversary race here in Vinton. Had I think there was about 110 cars right at 110. They're racing in Dubuque, which is Sunday night is their normal night. They're racing in Dubuque, an hour and a half from here, maybe hour and 15 minutes from here. Had 129 cars up there at their weekly show. And then you had the whole hog going on over in Stewart, which doesn't normally race on Sunday nights, more of a Wednesday night racetrack in our book. And Mike's got 172 cars over there. So you've got Sunday night racetracks, all paying. You got a weekly show, a little bit more money in Dubuque. I think they were paying. You had the whole hog, which is raised purses and everything. And then you have the anniversary race here in town, all Sunday nights racing. And look at how many cars are each. 400 and some odd cars. Am I doing the math right?
Yep.
Between the three racetracks on a Sunday night, just here in the state of Iowa. So
all within about 3 hours of each other.
All within
pretty close to 3 hours.
You could probably get to 3 hours. You could get from Dubuque to Stewart really close. Yeah.
Yep.
So lots of race cars, and at the end of the day, I think if you were to poll all those race car drivers, they race those places because they're close. They race those places because they like to go to that racetrack. So it's really challenging for us as an association, and even for promoters as promoters trying to put on big specials, higher paying specials, big purse specials. It's really challenging to pull racers from long distances, especially these days when they historically stay close to home. It's cheaper, it's less expensive to stay close to home to race. And they don't really necessarily have to drive long distances to race for increased purses, because almost every part of the country's got them these days. So,
but you know what? If we put quick changes in stock cars, they would race all over the place.
Yeah.
All over. I mean, it's just a fact.
We heard that argument with modified racing.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
I mean, we heard all kinds of things when it comes to rules. If you change this, if you do that,
I'll race more.
We'll do it more. And the reality is that's not really what happens. The quick change has got some convenience factors. Obviously, we aren't going to dispute that. But will a quick change in the stock cars make the division bigger? I would argue that till my dying day that it's not, and it won't. At the end of the day, make that division more popular or bigger. That is really not how it works in our book when it comes to race car rules. So, didn't do that for modifieds. When we added quick changes, we didn't double our modified membership, contrary to what people might have said prior to that. So
at the end of the day, and maybe I'm wrong, but what I see more times than not, racers are racing for convenience. What's easy for them to get to? What's something they're not going to have to spend a lot of money to get to? What's the track that has a track surface that they're not going to tear their car up and that they're comfortable with? It's all those little things. What's the track that's going to get them out of there in 3.5 hours opposed to 6 hours? To me, those are the factors that drive car count across the country.
Yeah, I think Corey did a really good job. Corey and Rick at the anniversary race did a really good job. And I thought the race in there was really good. You look at who won the sport mods. Cam Reimers won the sport mods. And again, here we are 20 years into sport mod racing, and I would pick, and I don't, again, we've talked about betting on races and some of that stuff, and our picks as officials and things like that. I would pick, if Cam Reimers is at a race, I would pick Cam Reimers to have a legitimate shot any place he's unloading. He is that good of a racer. He's got that good of a racing program. And he has arguably right now probably one of the fastest sport mods in all of the Northern Sport Mod division. So he to see him show up in Vinton, I was like, ooh, it's going to be tough. And he drew well, and he started in the first couple rows, and I was like, he got to the front pretty quick, and he was chased by some very fast sport mods in this area. But Cam won it and didn't terribly surprise me. The mod race was a little different. Again, if you watch it on IMCA TV on our replay, that race was interesting because you had Tom Berry on the front row, and Tom's hard to beat when he's up front. We've seen that many times, and he blasted to the front and ran around the rim at Vinton for 10 or 12 laps, however many it was, and grenaded his crate motor leading it, and it turned the race over to Flippo, to Jerry, who's an Iowa trans, from California, and now he's living in Iowa somewhere. And he's a very capable racer as well. And he had some overheating problems and fell out leading the race, which I thought was interesting. And then turned it over to Logan Anderson, who's our defending Sport Mod Super Nationals champion, who switched to modifieds because he likes the spec engine. If anybody's wondering why he went to modifieds, it's exactly what he told me. Logan led the race for a little while, but he got chased down by our defending national champion, 2-time national champion, Chaz Baca, and Chaz ran him down on the bottom and passed him. And he didn't run off and hide, but that race was 46 laps, and it was really cool to watch. If you want to watch a good modified race, I thought that one played out really well up until about the last 3 laps when Baca really kind of took over, and it wasn't going to beat, you weren't going to beat him unless he broke at that point. So
I didn't check Facebook. Was Tom Berry okay with the track conditions?
I thought the track conditions in Vinton were good. I mean, Corey's busting his ass. I hate it when racers make comments that promoters aren't working on their racetrack when we know
They have
for a
no
fact they
clue.
are. It's tough.
They have
It's tough.
no clue.
Vinton's a good example, and then we'll talk about something else. Corey races early. He starts at 5 o'clock. And I told him, Corey, you're racing too early. You got to start at 6. You quit starting at 5 because I don't care what you do or what kind of equipment you have. We have the best equipment possible at prepping dirt racetracks at Boone. And if the sun is out right over the racetrack, it's going to kill it. And I don't care what anybody says. You can have the best equipment in the world and the most money in the world, but you're not going to change this issue. The racetrack is going to get killed by the sun in the daylight. And so Corey fights that a little bit by his early start times, and hopefully I can convince him, and he's been talking about moving it back, him and Rick, move it back to 6, hot laps at 5:30. It just gives them an extra hour of not having to deal with the sun. And it makes a huge difference on a dirt racetrack. I think it's why most our racetracks race later in the evening or when the sun is going down instead of trying to race at noon every Saturday or some crazy thing. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I think we as a sanctioning body need to step in and mandate that every track put the dome over it with a climate controlled, situation.
Yeah.
That way the racers can't complain about the track. Yeah. And, what they don't understand, it can be sunny all day. The promoter's water it like he should. And all of a sudden a cloud comes in and it turns it to overcast. And guess what? Too much water. And I've always told racers, just like racers missing setups on their race car, promoters are dealing with so many intangibles that are 1,000% out of their control. One little miss, one little change in wind, one little cloud, it throws everything they've done off. And, I just wish every racer could follow a promoter around for 1 week and see what goes in to putting on a facility for their hobby. And I think we'd have a lot less bitching. I mean, it might hurt Facebook a little bit because it would take a lot of that out of the equation. But they just need to try to understand. And these promoters that were racers, I mean, every one of them say the same thing. God, if only I knew it was this hard. If only I knew this. If only I knew this. It's you get on that other side of the fence and it opens some eyes.
I'm not a promoter, and I don't really ever want to be a promoter. I mean, the closest we get to it is Super Nationals and our involvement over there at Boone. But if I were a promoter and I had to pick, like, what's the ideal weather? Like, if I had to pick, ideally, what's the weather at every race I had? It would be cloudy. It wouldn't be sunny. It would not be this clear sun. I mean, people love beautiful days. We all love beautiful days. We all like going outside, but no clouds in the sky and the sun beating down on a racetrack is really bad for dirt track racing. Generally speaking, for a promoter, it presents an obstacle that's very difficult for them to overcome. But yeah, I'd pick cloudy and a little overcast.
Drizzle.
The wind, sometimes the wind does not matter, in my opinion. And what I've seen and what we deal with, and we have had a lot of wind here in Iowa the last couple of years. It's like the wind never stops blowing. That isn't necessarily the problem that racetracks have to overcome.
Unless it's blown into the grandstands.
Deal with the wind. Yes, that's the issue that wind causes more so than anything else. It isn't necessarily what it does to the racetrack and the surface from the racer's standpoint. What the problem the wind causes is if it's blowing right straight into the grandstands, it can create some dust eating circumstances. And I don't care what anybody says either on that subject. People don't want to eat dirt. It's dirt track racing, and we go to dirt track racing expecting a dirt track race, but we don't expect to come home as raccoons, and most looking like raccoons, and most race fans don't either. So that's the challenge wind creates. It isn't really the surface itself. But anyhow, Corn Belt Clash. Let's move on. We the Corn Belt Clash.
I want to finish one thing. I want to wrap up the champions of the All-Star Tour. Garrett Gregory won the modifieds. He's out of basically Houston, Texas. Jared Bransom won the sport mods right out of there at Burleson, I believe is his hometown. And William Gould won the stock cars. So once again, all great drivers, and wrapping up, it was a great series down there.
Yep.
Let's move on.
And the tour, obviously, in the race in Vinton, all this stuff's on IMCA TV replay. For those that have a monthly subscription, you can watch all these races and all the people we're talking about. So
one more thing on the tour. You better put on your calendar for next year. Marcus jumped on board, and I think the tour is only going to get better now that we've got somebody dedicated to the front end stuff of the tour. Before we had all the promoters trying to do it, and their plates are so full trying to get the facility ready to race. But now Marcus is on board, and he's already got things going. His mind was going 1,000,000 miles an hour this year. He came on about, maybe a month and a half before it started, and brought a lot to it this year. I can only think what it's going to be like with a full year of him on the loose. So,
for sure, it takes a team. Just like the racers, it takes a race team. Usually, for a racer to be somewhat successful, it takes some people behind the scenes, and the tours and our end, and running racetracks and administering tours is no different. It takes a team. It takes the right people. It takes dedication.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good to have Marcus come on board. I think I said that before in a podcast.
Yep.
Super good guy.
Yep.
So let's talk about the West Coast a little bit. Ben, you're off traveling over the weekend too, weren't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it was like 9.5 hours of driving from the first racetrack to the last racetrack, and really good racing. The Central California Clash, four completely different racetracks, 4 great facilities. And, it was fun. It was fun to get to see. I'd never been to the Bakersfield Speedway, Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway. It was their first ever tour race they had there. That kicked things off on Thursday night. And then Friday night, Santa Maria hosted their first ever Clash race. And I was there last year, like late July, for a deal that I was working, but I'd never been there for an IMCA race. And in that time span, they've just done a remarkable job. I think I was talking to you guys on Tuesday about, wow, the bathrooms they got live plants, and then they've got a basket for napkins that you pull out. I was waiting for somebody to hand me like a napkin, like you see, in some of the fancy places. It was, it was super cool. And of course, Merced put on, as it does, great high bank bull ring racing, and wrap things up at Petaluma, not too far from San Francisco. And it's great to see that Doug Lockwood and that whole group that put that thing together is continuing to do it. Last year, it was kind of broken up to like a traditional series where they raced like once a month. This was back to the consecutive days of a speed week format. And, the racing was great. Car counts were pretty good overall, I would say, especially Saturday night. Because Saturday is tough when other things are going on. But I think it's a success, and it looks like they're planning for next year too, which is great.
Yeah, I think racers like the condensed versions of these tours. The ones that go on once a month, or throughout the course of an entire racing season, I think they're a little bit more demanding on people's schedules, on their travel, on their expenses. I think the condensed versions, what we see at least, seem to be more popular, and I think that's a sign of economics a little bit, and time, and what the racer has to dedicate to the tour in order to participate. Because we got the Dakota Tour, and you're coming up. There's a good example of it, the All-Star Tour down in where Jim was just at. And then the Tougher Than Dirt Tour you're going up to in North Dakota, and some of these other things. We're seeing these condensed versions are just, within 4, 6 days of racing that people can plan for and almost treat as vacations.
Once again, at the same time as the All-Star Tour was going on, Nathan Moore put together a Race Saver Sprint Car Tour where was it at? Texarkana, 67, Rocket, Hunt County, RPM, and wrapped up in Waco. And, I'm looking at the car counts, they had right about 35 cars a race there. And, once again, good racing. I talked to some of the promoters. The racing was good, crowds were good, and obviously it was very, very well supported by the racers.
Yeah,
So I think that kind of goes just what you were talking about.
right. Yeah, and then you have a tour like that one that visits a lot of facilities that aren't terribly familiar with IMCA weekly racing. We don't sanction a lot of stuff there, but we do sanction events there. So to see those car counts and to see the participation on the race saver side of things is pretty cool. You can get
Yeah.
35 race savers in 4 nights in a row, whatever it was. I mean, that's impressive. I don't care what part of the country you're 5 nights in a row. I don't care what part of the country you're talking about. That's impressive, not just for race savers, but it's impressive for almost any division. So it's very cool, And again, right, the race saver. What allows that to happen is the facilities that are running race saver more dedicated, consistently. Because racers, generally speaking, when you invest in a race car, and it doesn't matter what division it is, but when you invest in a race car, you want to be able to race it. It's like buying a boat. Who buys a boat if they don't have a lake to put it in?
Correct.
Not too many people. So you buy race cars because you want to race them, and so we do our best here at getting as many facilities running our sanctioned rules as possible for the racers who are building the cars or buying the cars, all of those things. But it also takes those facilities where they don't run it all the time to pique the interest of racers at times as well. People do want to go to new places. They do want to race their cars at places they've never been before. We hear it all the time. Racers say, "Oh, I've never been here. Or I've never been there." Jazz Baca in Vinton is not something I've seen a lot. I've been living in town here for, I don't know, the better part of almost 50 years. So it's cool to see him come here and win. That's kind of cool. And it's cool to see race saver guys going and supporting a tour like that. That was really, really good to see. And it's really good for the race saver division, I think, not just in general, but specifically down there in that Texas market.
Yeah, and it's only going to help a track like KSP and Hot Speedway down in Waco, heart of Texas, that are running them basically weekly. I think it's an every other week deal.
Yeah.
They switch off with the modifieds, but a tour like that is only going to strengthen that weekly program at the end of the day.
Correct. I would agree.
And they had a lot of different winners too. I mean, you had the vets and Kevin Ramey winning the opener at
Older than
Texarkana. And then, John Carney the second winning a couple. But then you also have Jeb Sessoms, who's been doing really well, won the last night. But Ryder LaPlante, who ended up winning the championship, won the second night out, from Calera, Oklahoma, same place as William Gould. He's only 18 years old and has got a bright future in the Race Saver IMC Sprint Car division.
Oh, yeah. And, I think Kevin had a pretty big advantage on that first night. Dylan couldn't be there because he had to work. So he can honestly say that for that race, he was the fastest Ramey there. Now, the other 4 races after that, I think the stats will kind of prove that might not be the case. But
yeah, that is a good deal. Just in general, both those tours in Texas, I think they really do. They do make a statement. They make a statement for the state of, I think, of IMCA racing in the South Central region across multiple divisions. So,
I think we kind of planted the IMCA flag as the king of racing in Texas last weekend.
Well, we again, we can't do without the racers. It's really and the loyal tracks. So it's cool to be a part of because everything ebbs and flows. We have our ups and downs. We have our times where we leave, feeling a little bit discouraged as officials and stuff like that, and then we have times where we leave we're just on cloud 9. So I just thought the last weekend there was a lot of really, really cool things going on in IMCA racing. I wanted to touch on the Corn Belt Clash. I think I mentioned it, but I really didn't say much about it. I have to commend Jimmy May for his effort on the Corn Belt Clash. That's been something that's been pretty important to him. He gets tow money for a lot of guys. He does some special behind-the-scenes stuff that we don't really necessarily promote a bunch at IMCA. But Jimmy seems to always be pounding the pavement for that division for people behind the scenes that I don't know if they necessarily realize. And there seems to be a lot of people who are very passionate about mod light racing that are supportive of things like that Jimmy's doing. And the Corn Belt Clash it went to Marshalltown on Friday, then it went to Boone, on Saturday, kind of part of the anniversary special, same nights, and then it went over to the Whole Hog on Sunday and had, I think they were in mid 35 to 40 mod lights at all of those races as well, which is, again, for any division, that's really good. And there's some good racing. Jimmy's kid, Josh, I think got upside down Friday night at the end of the race. Yeah, Josh had some rough tumbles this year. He's doing his best to tear that race car up, either willingly or unwilling. Who knows, however it is. But he was okay in that crash. It was a wild one at the end, and so they weren't racing. I didn't see him at Boone, and I was there on Saturday. But man, the mod lights are fast. Holy shit! I mean, I was sitting there watching the races and with Lottie on the backstretch of Boone, and he's like, "Good God, look at how fast those things are going." And they do. They turn as quick a lap times as anything on the racetrack. It's wild. With just a little, I say little, it's not little, it's still a big car, but not a full-size modified. But they seem to make it work. I think John Padilla won. I think that's how I say his name. John Padilla won when I was there. So, on Saturday night. And then
he ended up winning the whole deal too.
Yeah, he's been fast. He's one of those cars that he's a Central Iowa mod light guy. So when I see his name and I see his car, I'm kind of familiar with his car because you see him quite a bit in that area where I'm at. And he's one that you can almost pick to win a race. He's a safe bet if you're going to be betting on races to win a mod light race. So and him winning the tour is not terribly surprising. But again, there's some tough competition. Very tough competition in that mod light division.
3 different winners, all from 3 different states: Missouri, Illinois, and Ohio.
Yep.
I mean, it
Another
came
testament
down to the last night.
Another testament to the division and the competitiveness of it, and the racers who are competing in it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We talked a lot about what went on last week, but I mean, I think it just keeps going on and on. We got some big races coming up here in the very, very near future.
Let's move on for some of the stuff we talked about and move on to some of the races that are going on. Go ahead.
I think, starting next, I think, what is it? Practice is Sunday coming up, and then we race Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. This Clay County Fair Speedway, Mike and Trent Chin, obviously the promoter up there, putting together a special. Modifieds, they're going to pay $1,000 the first night, $2,000 and $4,000 the third night. So that's $1,000, $2,000, and $4,000 for the 3 nights. Stock cars are going to be $1,250, $2,500, and $5,000 to win last night. Sport mods are $1,000, $1,250, and $2,000. Hobby stocks are $1,000 and $1,500, and it's a great payback too. And if you guys have never raced at Spencer, it's just such a neat facility. I mean, it's the old fairgrounds and everything about it.
Kind of like I mentioned earlier, the opportunity for people to race for more money in any of our divisions seems to be as high as ever, and some of these purses seems to be as big as ever. I've had a handful of promoters mention that. They're paying more money than they've ever paid, and in some aspects that's good. In some aspects that's troubling. Again, we don't want people racing for nothing. We don't expect it, but what you're racing for does impact what you're willing to spend on your race car in order to win the race. So
sure.
But Mike and Trent, they've taken some pretty big risks over the last few years since they've been promoters, obviously, and up there in Spencer. Mike did a good job down at the Whole Hog. You got to think. It's pretty cool to see 172 cars on a special anywhere, but you got to thank Todd Van Eaton and what he's doing with Van Eaton Pork and how
Fox Welding,
and he's very active at the Super Nationals at helping us there, and he's got some more cool ideas for this year's Super Nationals that he's working on. But it's it takes guys like Mike taking the risk, guys like Todd putting up some of the money through businesses outside the sport, And again, Mike and Trent have done a really good job. That Spencer race up there is a good example of their efforts. So I think you're going to go up to that, aren't you, Jim?
Yes, I'll be up there at least one night. Then I'm going to come back and make the swing up through Wisconsin. We have, be able to hit all the tracks up there in one weekend with the Clash on the Creek going on at 141. So yeah, I'll be up in Spencer on Monday again.
You put a lot of miles on your car. You realize that, right?
Your car. Thank God it's your car.
But a lot. Jim puts a lot of miles on a car in a year. I don't know, 50,000 probably 40. It's a lot.
Yeah, I'm up around 50. But it's almost a year and a half old. So
right. So
it's a 24. So
a lot of miles. Yeah, I might make my way up to Spencer too. I was thinking about trying to get up there on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Ben, you going?
I am gonna be in North Dakota that day, so
that's right. We got something else going up
we'll
there
be in
too.
the same time zone for the first time in a
Maybe.
while.
No, what track is it up there that isn't in the?
Oh wait, yeah,
Is it
like there's
Dickinson?
half of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
There goes that theory.
Yeah, there that goes.
But what do you got going up there?
Well, it's the Tougher Than Dirt tour. It specializes with the Sunoco IMC stock hobby stocks, pardon me, and the Carl Chevrolet IMC Northern Sport mods. 6 nights of racing. A couple of tracks I've never been to. Starts off with one of them, McLean County Speedway in Underwood. Then it goes to Southwest and Dickinson, then Williston, then Estevan across the border. And another one I haven't been to, Thunder Mountain Speedway in Botno, and then closes out at the Playground in Power on a Sunday night in Minot at Nodak.
Yeah, that's a neat tour. I mean, I've never been up there, obviously the Dakota tour, but those are some neat venues that you'll get to go to, and the racers obviously will get to race on. And once again, that Beater's still putting that tour on, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah, Brandon Beater and the Beater family.
In spite of Brandon, that's a neat tour.
Yeah, yeah.
If I didn't give Brandon
really
some
excited
shit,
for
it just wouldn't be it. No,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun up there.
We've also got some races out in the New York, Pennsylvania area. And you have to mention.
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
Finally.
Have to
Jake
mention-
Maynard's going to kick out the tour. They had a rain out to start the season, but I think June 6th they're going to open up at the Hill Speedway.
We've talked about this stuff behind the scenes a lot with Jake's effort out there. And he's sure trying. And
Oh my God.
and
It's succeeding,
And I
the
do
numbers.
think he is making some inroads in that as well. I think it's weird for those people out in that New York market. If it's not an East Coast modified or a mud bus or whatever you want to call those things, they're Jim's from that area originally. I don't know if everybody knows that. Jim's from Rochester, New York, right?
No, Rome.
Home
of Richie Evans, the greatest.
Okay, I thought you were
short
from
track driver
Rochester.
the greatest short track driver in the history.
Well, that's
of
why you like to go to
automobile
Utica, Rome. That's where you've said.
That's
oh,
where I
man,
grew up.
I just want to go to Utica, Rome. Well, we don't do much business at Utica, Rome,
No.
but don't
I
have
got
a
screwed out of a trip last year.
we back when Harvey Fink started modifieds out of Brewerton, right?
Yeah.
That was in the late
Yep.
90s, if I'm correct.
Yep,
We
probably
ran it.
97.
We made some inroads out there for many years with modifieds, and then when they put
Frank and Audrey at Skyline.
gosh, yep, Skyline. I've been to up and down that central, upstate New York area
I've been at Skyline once or twice.
for many years, and we struggled. We've struggled out there a little bit, and we've talked about this behind the scenes at least with crate engines, and then putting crate engines in the sportsman's division out there, which is kind of like for those that don't know East Coast modifieds, it's kind of like a sport mod compared to a modified out here. Essentially what they did is they took those big block modifieds, which is like their upper level premier division out there. What Brett Hearn and what's the other guy? I can't remember his name. He's racing the trucks. That Friesen Friesen? Is there
Stuart Friesen, yeah.
Stuart Friesen,
Yep.
yeah. Those guys race, and they kind of put they have a sportsman, which is like a feeder class sport. They put crates in those things about the same time we put crates in modifieds, if I'm correct, right, Jim?
Yep.
About that same
Yep.
time frame. And they really took off
A couple
out there.
years after.
It pulled people out of IMCA modified racing out there and pulled them into sportsmen. And so we it's hard for us to fight that, and we can't change. We couldn't really do anything other than just stay the course on what we did. And in the sportsman deal out there, it ballooned quite a bit with crates in it, but I think it's come back down to what I would consider to be at the very least reality.
Yes.
And so I think guys at the end of the day still enjoy IMCA modified racing out there. And I think Jake is been very adamant about that, and he's been very loyal to us and helping us do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's
The
just cool
rumor
to
is
see.
Jake's going to come back and race the Super Nationals.
That'd be good.
I'll believe it when I see it, but that is a rumor. So you might want to start getting your tickets early.
Be more than welcome.
He texted me yesterday saying see you at Boone. So I don't know
There you go.
if he's going to Boone, in a couple weeks or in a couple months.
Couple
He's
weeks.
got the Super Nationals on his schedule. The cat's out of the bag now.
Look out.
I kind of wanted to hold it back because I didn't want to scare a lot of other drivers.
So yeah,
You know,
it's good.
I don't want a lot of people thinking they're going to race for second because Jake's coming out here, and we affect the car count. But the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah, we really appreciate all the effort he's given IMCA racing out there in that area for sure, because it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
So
And we got the Hill Speedway is pretty much stuck through us this whole time, and once again the car counts we're getting back into places like Woodhall, Thunder Mountain.
yeah,
I think they had 16 modifieds the other night at Woodhall. Hell, that's a good modified count at a lot of tracks in the country, and to see that out in that region out there in Pennsylvania, New York, it's really kind of neat. And once again, I
is.
think a lot of the credit goes to Jake.
yeah. Like I said, we really appreciate it. What else? Anything else? One last thing.
Clash on the Creek.
Clash of the Creek is coming up. I mean, there's lots of Clash on the Creeks. He's got, which division is going to kick that off? Is it modifieds?
Modifieds.
But he's got the stock car
10K
race
to win.
He's got the is it 2 days or 1 day?
It's a 2-day show. I think practice Monday, race Tuesday, Wednesday.
And CZ's got control of that show now, so he's doing everything in his power. Not that Dan didn't have control of it, but Dan sold sold the racetrack. Dan Rajicek, longtime IMCA mod racer, sold the racetrack to CZ, and CZ's just I don't think CZ does anything like half-assed.
No.
Everything is like gas to the floor, wide open. So it's cool to see a person who's, I think, kind of like that, and Dan Rajicek sell it to a guy like CZ who's like that. So I think good things at 140, 141.
You talk about two guys with
continue
a
to come.
passion for the sport.
For sure. Absolutely. Yep. And CZ's son Cole is becoming a very recognizable name in two IMCA divisions, the stock car division and the mod division.
Absolutely.
He's a very good young racer. Come from CZ races. I don't know if he races anymore. CZ actually racing?
Yeah, he'll jump in a car every now and then.
Yeah. People forgot who he
Yeah.
is when his kids started racing.
Well,
He ran the other day.
Yeah, people don't talk about him when a race car. They talk about Cole.
Once again, when I was out there a couple of weeks ago with the sport compact situation, and I walk in there, and I damn near walk past CZ, not recognize him. CZ's lost over 100 pounds in like the last 6 months, so it's like CZ 2.0 now, CZ light.
That's
But-
good. Being healthy is important.
But once again, you talk about what you just said. He doesn't do anything half-ass.
He doesn't.
I mean, I don't care what it is, bars, business, losing weight, running racetracks.
Yep,
It's wide open for ZZ.
it is. Yeah, CZ's already reached out to Belinda at the Super Nationals about parking, so he's planning to bring in I'm sure Cole will come down with him, but there's a pack of those guys. There's a pack of those guys from Wisconsin that come down to Super Nationals.
Yeah.
More than one pack, obviously, and TZ's one of the groups that, he's already making preparations, and we're just now starting to get into Super Nationals stuff. Obviously, we usually wait till after Memorial Day, the season gets going and stuff like that, and then we start our Super Nationals preparation. So that is going to start taking place, I imagine, here in the next 4 weeks or so. So it'll be good to have CZ and any of those Wisconsin guys come to the Super Nationals. One last thing before we wrap it up, I want to talk about just a couple of things in the penalty box. Fairly uneventful for the most part since the last podcast. I would say that people always ask, what's going on, and I think people find some of this stuff interesting. It's interesting. Not a lot, but if I had to pick like what's the most common violation right now, I would say it's probably two things. Weight continues to be one where people just either they don't get enough gas in the car. We've got some race saver penalties, two position penalties on the weight, if I remember correctly. Weight violations or last. It's last in the weight.
Last place.
Sorry.
Yep.
I can't keep up with some of our penalties at times. There's so many divisions and so many things, but we try to make it to where the penalties fit the crime, and so weight violations have been something we've seen, a handful of here, I would imagine, in the last month or so, roughly. The other thing that probably is might be even the most common violation we've had so far this year is sport compacts with illegal engines. I mean, that seems to be something that we come across almost every week. So from the wrong intake manifolds to ported cylinder heads to changed camshafts, I see a lot of that with the compacts. I'm not sure what to think about that. It's interesting, but at the same time, I'm like, it's kind of an entry level division. That's how we've always designed the compacts, and I don't mean to offend anybody by saying that, but that is just the way we've always looked at it. So if you want to port your cylinder heads, I would think that in a sport compact would be like the last division you should be doing that in. If you want to do those kinds of things, step up to a class where you can do that. You can do that in some of our divisions. Stock cars, modifieds. But ported cylinder heads, altered engines, and compacts seem to be one of the more popular disqualifications that we're seeing as we start getting into quite a bit of racing this year. And one last thing, we did also catch a cheated crate last week. Had some very poorly made GM cap seals, some very poorly counterfeit ones, along with some altered IMCA seals. So, if you're going to cheat your crate engine, at least take the time to...
Yeah, it's going to take a better effort than that.
Yeah, to get really good GM fake seals, if you can find such a thing, or really good IMCA ones that we can't figure out, because we can catch it. Dave can catch it. So it's interesting because GM went to that cap seal on the crates. Just one last thing on the crate. They went to the cap seals, and it's got like a
basically.
like a CT scan kind of looking pattern on it. People just think it's just stuff. It actually is. GM actually has a software program. It's proprietary, meaning it's theirs. They own it. That they provide to us as a sanction and to other sanctions that are doing crate engine inspections, where we have to get the proprietary software installed on our phones to read the GM cap seals. And so Dave has that, obviously, and Dave just walks up to it, and if it's got a GM cap seal on it, he just scans it. It tells them where the engine was produced, and it tells them on the GM side of things everything about that engine. So if you're trying to remake that or counterfeit that, it's going to be very, very challenging to do.
Kind of like making fake wheel stickers.
Kind of, yeah. Those are kind of easy to catch at times, too. Caught a few of those, too.
The barcode, though, it's got the barcode on there, and it tells us the year, the date, the factory that those wheels were made, and even by the person that made them.
Right. The name of the person who's running the machine.
Correct. We're pretty proud of that.
We are. That's proprietary.
If you don't believe us,
proprietary, too.
If you don't believe us, take a piece of rubber and run your head against that concrete wall.
Well, we're over an hour, and Jerry ain't even in that room.
Damn it. Now we can't blame it on him.
I'm going to start getting blamed for all this shit.
Goddamn, Ben. Ben just keeps talking and talking, and next thing I know, we're
Any last thing you want to add, Ben? Any shout outs to anybody or anything?
Real quick, there was a big race at Grays Harbor Raceway, $2,500 win for the West Coast Clash. Jeffrey Hudson getting the win. It was an all Oregon top 3. Really looking forward to going to North Dakota, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, we appreciate all you're doing for us, and I think the racers
Absolutely.
do too. I mean, you seem to have your finger on the pulse of what the hell's going out there on the West Coast, especially. But you're writing stories for all over the place too, and we really, really appreciate it. We're so happy to have you on our team. So I think it's only going to get better. The more the more you get involved and deal on the back end of what we deal with as a sanction, I think you're going to bring a lot of transparency and a lot of attention to events and people. But with all your efforts, and we really do appreciate it. So, how about you, Jim? Anything else? Oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say, I think I only got 2 races to watch, and I'll be caught up on all the IMCA TV replay subscriptions. So, best $24.99 you can get.
best deal in racing.
Ben watches a lot of races. You might be able to set a record. We could have a contest. Who watches more races than Ben? Try to find a race fan that actually watches more races than Ben does.
You know, it's a guy like Ben that ruins that $24.99 a month replay subscription. We need to charge by the race. And then we'd be set. We'd have 2 IMCA spec jets.
He gets his money's worth for sure. He does. How about you, Jim? Anything else?
No, just gonna head to. I can't tell you where I'm heading Friday. No, I'm gonna go down to Waukene, Kansas. I can't even remember the last time I've been there. And then I'll go up to Spencer, and then I'll head to Outagamie, Shawano, Luxembourg, 141, and then I'll hit the sprint car show in Algona on the way home. So,
I think Jim shakes more hands and talks to more people than a politician. I mean, you are constantly doing it.
And I'm a hell of a lot more honest than any politician out there.
I mean, I got a great deal of respect for you for doing it, because you are, like, without a doubt, one of the most dedicated employees we have ever had at IMCA, and you're passionate about it, and I think it shows. And man, we behind the scenes, we both have moments where we're like, we scratch our head and like we feel like we're just getting kicked in the teeth all the time, and you know, for
a lot of times kicked right in the balls too.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that, but I don't know if it'd be appropriate or not. We have moments where it's just like, oh, you know, God, but you try hard, and I think it shows. I do. I think the racers appreciate it. You talk to a shitload of people, and talk to me a lot, and I think it makes the effort that you're putting in there, and Dave and Ben and going to races, Kirk,
absolutely.
all the people are out pounding the streets or pounding the racetracks at events are really, I think, what racers want to see and I think deserve. So
you've
you guys
assembled a great team, and it's even, you know, getting better and better as we keep going. And I think once again, Ben's gonna take us to that next level, to say.
Well, it's been a good podcast without Jerry. I think without Jerry and I miss Ryan a little bit. But it's been a good podcast without them. Hopefully next week we'll try to get another one in. I think we should be able to schedule one, but there's a lot of racing going on midweek next week too, where everybody's at.
Yep.
Jerry's a celebrity. He's like a
in his own
politician
mind
as well. He's like shaking hands and kissing babies and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So Jerry stays pretty busy.
Was he with the governor the other day?
He was. We had the
Jerry's
governor. We had the governor of Iowa at Boone Speedway.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Jerry's kind of regionally famous in his own mind.
Right. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Obviously, again, if you know, we try to talk about a lot of different things. We hopefully don't talk about the same things, but we do repeat ourselves a lot because that's just kind of part of my personality. But if you want to tune in, if you miss some races, again, we always want to offer people the IMCA TV replay. It is going to be the best bang for your buck to watch all of these events that we talked to. If it's on IMCA TV or on one of our third-party streaming platforms, streamers that's on the platform. It is on and available at IMCA TV through your monthly subscription. So
One thing real
make sure
quick
to
on
check
that.
it out.
A portion of the money of that replay subscription goes right back to the drivers at the tracks.
Yeah, and the
And we can
racetracks.
talk,
Yeah.
we can talk about that later, but just real quick. So believe me, it's just not all going in Nate's pocket. It's a lot of it. It's going back to the racers and the racetracks.
Nate says he didn't even get paid. He's been doing this for free for 10 years.
Goddamn, Chris.
That's why we like you so much, Nate. You're cheap. Oh, shoot. Yeah, well, we hope everybody... We got to go. We're going to check out. We hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. It really is the official start of a racing season across the board, I think, in the industry. So we're gonna roll into June with lots of specials, lots of shit to do, lots of races to see, and we look forward to talking about it, obviously, in our next episode. So again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time.